We bought it. A whole lot of land nobody really knew much about. No real maps, no clear answers. So yeah, the next step was obvious. Find out what we just bought. So that's exactly what they did. President Thomas Jefferson knew one thing for sure. If this country was going to grow, they needed to understand what was out there. So he made the call. Send a group west. Not to settle, not yet, but to explore, to map it, to learn it, to see just how big this new world really was.
They packed what they thought they'd need: food, tools, weapons, everything they could carry. Because once they left this place, there wouldn't be anything waiting for them out there. This wasn't just a group of guys throwing things together. Someone had to be in charge, and leading it were two men, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. Chosen for this, trusted to figure it out, because once they pushed off, the men would be depending on them to lead the way. And little by little, it all started coming together. Boats loaded, gear secured, every piece in its place. Not perfect, but ready as they were ever going to be. And then they were off, pushing out into the current, leaving behind the last bit of what felt familiar. The river stretched out in front of them, wide and steady, but there was something about it now. It wasn't just water anymore, it was the way forward. At first it felt manageable, the movement, the rhythm, the sense that maybe this wouldn't be so bad. But the farther they went, the quieter it got. Fewer signs of people, fewer reminders of anything they knew. And it started to settle in. They weren't just traveling anymore. They were heading into something unknown, and there was no turning back now. At first, it felt manageable. The river carried them, things settled in, and for a while it almost felt like they had this figured out. Paddle, drift, repeat. A rhythm you could get used to. But not all of it was smooth. Every now and then the river would turn on them. Faster water, hidden rocks, a bad stretch that made everyone tighten up a little. Nothing they couldn't get through, but enough to remind them this wasn't going to be easy. And then something else started to set in. Because before long, they started noticing things. Movement along the tree line, figures on the bank, people. They weren't alone out here. Nobody rushed in, nobody made a move. It was more like both sides just watching each other, keeping their distance, trying to read what they were looking at. And that went on for a bit, until little by little, that space between them started to close. Slow, careful, and eventually, they stood there, face to face. The farther they went, the more it opened up. It wasn't just river anymore. It was valleys, plains, land that just kept going. You could stand there and look out and not see the end of it. And that's when it really started to hit. This wasn't just something they were passing through. This was something bigger than anything they'd ever known. This is where it stopped feeling like a journey and started feeling like work. The river wasn't helping them anymore. Half the time they were fighting it, dragging those canoes through water that didn't want to move, over rocks that didn't give an inch. And it wore on them. Long days, soaked gear, no real rest, just waking up and doing it all over again. Then the weather turned, cold, wet, miserable. The kind that gets into everything and doesn't let go. But they kept moving, step by step, mile by mile, just putting one in front of the other. Because out here, stopping wasn't really an option. They kept pushing forward. Some days it felt like they were making progress. Other days, it felt like they were just fighting the land itself. Pulling, dragging, guessing more than knowing. And before long, winter caught them. So they stopped, built shelter,
waited it out, let the cold settle in while they figured out what came next. And that's when everything changed. Because during that winter, they met someone. A young woman named Sacagawea. She wasn't just passing through, she knew this land, knew the people, knew what was ahead in a way none of them did. And for the first time, they weren't just guessing anymore. She showed them what could be eaten, what to avoid, how to move through the land instead of fighting it. When they needed horses, she knew who to find. When they needed to talk, she knew how. And maybe most important of all, her presence changed how others saw them. A group of armed strangers is one thing, but a group traveling with a woman, with a child, that told a different story. From that point on, this wasn't just a group of men trying to figure it out. Now they had someone who actually understood the path ahead. And that changed everything.
As spring broke across the plains, the Corps of Discovery pushed west from their winter camp, now guided by Sacagawea, following the Missouri deeper into a land few had ever seen. The river carried them into what we now call the Missouri Breaks, a place where the land twisted, narrowed, and turned unpredictable. Steep bluffs, jagged ridges, and endless bends made every mile harder than the last, and the weather offered no mercy. One day brought cold winds and sudden snow. The next, relentless heat beating down from an open sky. The land shifted without warning, and they were forced to adapt just to keep moving. Even the wildlife reminded them they were no longer in familiar territory. Massive grizzlies roamed the riverbanks, strong, fast, and unlike anything they had faced before. But the river still pulled them forward, until it didn't. What lay ahead would stop them completely, and force a decision that would test everything they had learned. By the time they reached the Great Falls, the river finally revealed its true obstacle. What stretched before them wasn't just one waterfall, but a series of powerful cascades roaring across the Missouri. They couldn't go through it, so they went around. For miles they carried everything, canoes, gear, and supplies over rough ground, through heat, wind, and unforgiving terrain. Every step earned. What should have taken days stretched into weeks. And when they reached the river again, they weren't just explorers anymore. They were survivors. By the time they cleared the Great Falls, every step had been earned. The river had tested them, the land had nearly broken them, and for a moment, it looked like that might be enough. But the journey wasn't done, not even close. Because what waited ahead would test them in ways the river never could.